It was a rare admission of weakness, coming from one of the world's most oppressive regimes. Last month, North Korea's official news agency reported that floods had devastated northern parts of the country. Triggered by torrential rain, the floods killed at least 140 people and left another 70,000 homeless, according to estimates from the International Federation of the Red Cross. And now that same aid organization says the country desperately needs humanitarian aid, as 600,000 people affected by the floods are at risk of hunger and disease.
The non-food items and the shelter items that the Red Cross have been able to distribute, the DPRK Red Cross, the affected community have now taken those items and have been able to build temporary shelters in their locations or close to their locations until they can get a permanent solution.
The UN has appealed for $28 million to help North Korea's flood victims, while the Red Cross says it requires $15 million to help the region recover. But it's only managed to raise 11% of that. And that's because the issue of aid in North Korea is highly political. Potential donors are reluctant to offer any support to a regime which is reported to be spending at least $1 billion on developing nuclear weapons, in defiance of UN resolutions. Last month, Pyongyang conducted its 5th nuclear test, triggering more international sanctions. The United States says it has no plans to send humanitarian aid. And South Korea has also ruled out sending help to its aggressive northern neighbor. The Red Cross is asking for countries to put politics aside and help those in need. But not everyone is listening. Critics say North Korea's appeal for humanitarian aid is deceptive. There are concerns that if aid is given, how much of it will reach the people in the hardest hit regions? Or will it be used to reinforce the Pyongyang regime and its nuclear aspirations? Christine Pirovolakis, The Newsmakers.
And Chris Staines joins me now from Pyongyang. He's the head of the delegation at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. I want to get a clearer picture from you of actually what you're seeing on the ground there and what North Koreans themselves that have suffered now are actually up against, especially compared to other developing and isolated countries that you've worked in.
Well, the situation in North Hamgyong province is quite difficult for the people that are living there. And for those that have been affected by the floods, it's quite desperate. They have their houses have been washed away, all of their belongings, their possessions are gone. The most basic of things like cooking items and bedding and clothing is all lost. And the people that are affected are just trying to get on with their lives and do what they can. The area is quite isolated and remote. It's in the northeastern area of the country, with the border with China, formed by the Tumen River, which is the river that flooded and caused so much of the loss. So access to the area is a challenge, there's no doubt about that.
Okay, and when you hear that donors are reluctant to give to North Korea because they fear where this money will go and that it will fall into the hands of North Korean authorities, how do you respond to them?
Well, this is a humanitarian situation. The needs of the people that are affected are the same needs that people all around the world face. The need for safe shelter, for safe water, for medicines, for food. These people have been affected by a terrible flood disaster, a disaster which has left them with nothing and left them very vulnerable as we approach a very cold winter. In this part of the country, the temperatures plunged to below zero. Last year, the 23rd of October was the day that the first snows fell. That's just a little over 2 weeks away from now. And there are thousands of people who are exposed and don't have the safety of a warm bed to sleep in.
Okay, but Chris, do you accept the argument that when aid has to be funneled through the government in power, and that by giving that aid to this government first, you're actually empowering the people that keep them poor, and they are able to actually profit themselves from this aid rather than giving it to the people in need, so that it's actually counterproductive to give to a country like North Korea?
DPRK is a complex situation. There are many complex situations in the world at the moment. There are many difficult humanitarian issues that we all face. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, it's about how we respond to the needs of the people that are affected. All of the organisations working here have experience working in difficult environments. We all understand the need for working directly with communities, monitoring the way in which the support is provided. For the Red Cross and Red Crescent, it's simple. We work through our local partners. The DPRK Red Cross were on the ground in the very first minutes after this disaster. They've been constantly on the ground since, and they'll be here long after the international organisations are no longer working with the affected people. They are part of the community. They see where the work goes. They know how to channel the aid so that it reaches those most in need.
So
and that's how we work.
You are getting help from the North Korean authorities?
DPRK has been very cooperative and supportive. I was part of the initial joint assessment mission which visited the affected areas in the first week of September. We had the opportunity to work with the government officials. They were very open, gave us access to all of the information that we needed, allowed us to work with and meet the local authorities, work with people in the communities, to visit the various sites. It was very flexible. We've enjoyed good cooperation and good coordination with the authorities since. And as is the case in most of these disasters, it is the authorities, the government, that leads the response.
Right.
The international community is contributing, but it's the government that is leading, and it's the people themselves that are doing most of the work.
But Chris, some investigations have shown that North Korea is happy to take international aid in lieu of actually paying for the imports that they would otherwise have to fund themselves, and then they use the money that they've saved to spend on weapons programs, for example.
As I said, DPRK is a complex situation. I'm a simple aid worker. I try not to become too involved in politics. As a member of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, I'm guided by our fundamental principles. The first one of those is about humanity, responding to the needs of people in crisis. Guided by that, I don't need to be too concerned about some of these other issues. We know what we do. We know how to go about it. We make sure that we work with the local authorities and with the local Red Cross to reach the local communities, to reach the people in need, to deliver support where it's actually needed. We've seen the need. We know it's there. We know that support is needed, and we're calling on the international community to give that support, to reach out and be humanitarian in our efforts.
And Chris, the ICRC and other NGOs are often the only ones that can actually provide a lens into what's actually happening on the ground in North Korea. How important is that? How important is your work to get the world to see what's happening in this very isolated country?
Well, we think our work's important, but of course our work is for the people themselves, and it's for the people we work with. The people in DPRK are the same as people all around the world. They're interested in their families, they're interested in education for their children, they're interested in safety and security and building a better life. It's the same as people anywhere else in the world, and it's great to have the opportunity to work with them. We have a dedicated and very committed group of people working in international organisations and in the international community present here in DPRK, and all of us are working because we believe in the common humanity we share, in the needs of individuals and people of DPRK.
Okay, Chris Staines, unfortunately we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us from Pyongyang.